Hey guys, welcome to another live show, another live She Knows Arsenal. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel on your way in and getting into the chat and letting me know how you guys are thinking and feeling during this transfer window. It is transfer deadline day. The transfer window has been broken into two parts because of the Club World Cup. You didn't know, so there can't be any deals like done or completed within like the next like 7 days or whatever it is. It's closed for like a week. So you did see some maybe of the Club World Cup teams trying to rush to get things done. That doesn't really include Arsenal, but we did still get an Ornstein bomb today. And we're going to talk about the Ornstein bomb as well as, you know, some of the information that came out in his most recent article around where Arsenal is in their transfer business and the targets that they're looking at. Just creating kind of like a clear picture of what direction we're going in. I do think that kind of like a week past, you know, since the last time maybe we had like a more of like a roundup, and I think about a week ago there didn't feel like there was a lot going on. It was quite quiet. And now it does feel like, although it's not like rumors every 5 seconds, like, you know, it's not like we're being linked to everybody and anybody, but I do think we have a clear vision pretty much on where we're at, what we're trying to get, some of the targets in those positions, and where we are in current deals. At this moment, we have 2 deals done, which 2 weeks into the window, that's not a bad thing. We don't have to talk about backup goalkeepers anymore. We don't have to talk about Zubimendi anymore. And now we can pretty much focus on the attack. And like I said yesterday, Ornstein had confirmed that Arsenal are looking to fulfill 3 positions in attack, which is really exciting. So we're going to get into it, but make sure, like I said, like, subscribe, all those types of things. Get into the chat. Let me know what you guys are thinking and feeling on deadline day. You know, I think it's so weird that the window is just like stopped for a week. It's just so weird. I don't know why they think that this is like makes sense, but who knows? Let's see. Marie says, what's the update on Rodrigo? We'll get into more chats about where everything is. OGN says, what's up? What's up? Dr. Ken says, hi, everyone. Ola Donkey says, nice music. Shamaria says, big up, Jess. And I'm very impatient with this Rodrigo stuff. I just want to know if he's leaving. And then Ruach says, patience, patience. So this morning, I've been up since like maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, because during the transfer window, I tend to wake up in the middle of the night and check Twitter to see if anything has happened. I just, it's just harder for me to sleep for some reason, because I'm like, things are happening and I can't see it. And waking up this morning, I was very happy to see that Ornstein had pretty much put a stop, or, an end to the conversations around Real Madrid hijacking the Zubimendi deal. I think over the last couple of days, I've sensed quite a bit of anxiety around that deal getting hijacked, and the fact that it hadn't been announced or it's not done. And kind of like, no matter how many times I said there's probably nothing to worry about, I love a panic. I'm the first one to push the panic button if I feel like something bad is happening. You guys know me, but I didn't feel panicked on this one, because there's just too many people that were saying that it was done and pretty much put their reputation on the line to let Arsenal fans know that there was nothing really going on. But these rumors of Real Madrid, calling him, and then him putting a halt to the signing, and them hijacking him in the middle of the night, I think made people nervous. And so Ornstein basically came out today and said that Arsenal regard Martin Zubimendi move from Real Sociedad as done and signed. The 26-year-old Spain midfielder is expected to report to the start of preseason with Arsenal. Real Madrid sources say that they never actively pursued the situation, and that it's just not happening, and I don't know how many times Hand of Arsenal and Fabrizio and Samuel Bell needed to reiterate it. I'm glad that Ornstein came out. So it is this deal, because he also said that basically the pause on it is just because of the accounting side of it. Real Sociedad want this transfer to be accounted for in July. So we're not going to announce it until then. And so I knew, I was like, well, because the first time that came out, I was like, okay, well, this is going to be a little bit of a shit show, because from now until then, there's going to be like a million rumors about him getting hijacked, which exactly that's what happened. But I'm hoping that, Ornstein making it, just reiterating it again. And then also the Spain expert from The Athletic also saying that there's nothing going on the Real Madrid side. They're not trying to get him, will allow Arsenal fans to just get excited about the signing without feeling or fearing that somebody's going to come and swoop him out from underneath us. I think it became even more, scary because of how well he played against France and Portugal. I think once you really accept that a player is really, really good, you become more fearful about them being hijacked. And in the transfer window, these transfer experts and journalists and all that kind of stuff make a lot more money and get a lot more clicks when they have multiple teams interested in a player. And so they're always going to play up the opportunity for somebody to lose out on a player. And when you have a massive online fan base like Arsenal that is totally insecure, unfortunately, and very anxious around signings, it is a good thing in their minds to try to create some sort of doubt around it. But we don't need to have doubt around Zubimendi anymore. He's signed, sealed, delivered until he gets the medical, but it's done. There's nothing to worry about. You can get excited about the signing. You can fully it's happening, So unless you're super old school and you still need to see him in the shirt, there's nothing to worry about. I'm so glad that he came out and said that, because it was just, I wasn't really worried, but it's like Marca are so shameless, because even some of their online, because their online, their media outlets are propaganda machines for, Barcelona and Real Madrid. Very different than the English media, where the English media kind of fights against the clubs and, is constantly trying to find holes and pick at clubs and get that big headline out to make somebody look bad. The way that the Spanish media talks about the clubs is in a much different light. They are PR machines and propaganda machines. And so instantly, right after the information comes out from Ornstein, then their mouthpieces are talking about Xabi Alonso likes Martin Zubimendi a lot, but at Real Madrid, they consider that position covered by the best of the world, Fede Valverde, Tchouaméni, and Eduardo Camavinga. So now they have the best players in the world. They don't need Martin Zubimendi. They weren't looking at him or whatever. And so, yeah, it's just, they're just such a different machine. I even saw, I'd seen something earlier as well where they were propping up something else, like some other player that they're looking at. And I was just like, yeah, they're just, the way that they operate is just completely different than English media. And they had started the cycle and Arsenal fans were getting sucked in. And it was like, it's just a telenovela of Spanish media. We don't need to get worried about it unless somebody big says that the tide is turning. So, yeah. Errol says, deal done. Transfer window is closing, Jess. Here we go. AD says, to be honest, I was never the biggest fan, but the more I watch, the more I realize just how solid of a player he really is. Gives me old school ball vibes. Victor says, Real Madrid are so dramatic. They're genuinely such a weirdo club. They tried to redo that whole remontada chat with Zubi and it failed. Shameless. Keenan says, if he hasn't signed the final contract and done his medical, he can still back out. The Arsenal perspective says everyone knows Marca are a propaganda machine for Real Madrid. Shameless. Ruach says I was always confident. Fabrizio and McBell were never putting their credibility on the line. So yeah, I totally understand it. And then so also to give a little bit more of, just to give you guys like also just like behind the scenes, you guys can't see him, but Benzema is just, he's pretending now that he can't get up on the bed. Like he's always been able to use the little steps to get on the bed. And now he just, mind you, he can jump on every couch and everything else, but all of a sudden now he can't jump on the couch. So I need to go in there and let him on the couch because he's crying and screaming. Don't sneak by me. Now stay up there. Apologize. Okay, so yeah, I just think it's nice to know that we don't have to worry about that. Now, something else that Ornstein had put in his article was the breakdown and how we're gonna pay Real Sociedad. We're gonna pay a little bit more, but the only reason why we're gonna pay a little bit more is so that we can break the payments down into smaller payments. So instead of paying the 50 million up front, we're gonna pay like 55 million. And so it's just like, so that we can almost like, like a credit card or some shit like that. You're going to pay like the additional like interest or whatever to make sure that you can break it down into smaller payments or whatever. So that will allow us to, whatever money we have on hand, to be able to be utilized for other things, which I think is really smart. Somebody had said that before, but now it's been confirmed by David Ornstein. So I thought that that was really interesting. And so, yeah, Zubimendi, it's done to a certain extent, so yeah, I think it's really good business. And, after seeing him in the Nations League, I think a lot of Arsenal fans are excited, and I think they should be. Business things, Rox says 55 million instead of 51. Good business to me, especially since we know that now we can start using money for other things because we need, a couple of more signings, I thought you were talking about human Benzema for a second. I was so confused. My dog, sorry. Let's see. He's not on the club website, but for all intents and purposes, it's a done deal. We know why he's not being announced just yet. So yeah, just checking the timeline, make sure nothing is happening. I'm pretty sure it's like, we're not going to get any more information about anything today, but they also spoke about, the Sesko situation and the fact that this week is going to be really important for Arsenal's negotiations around our attackers, not only just for the striker, but for the left wing. And so things should accelerate from here. With Sesko, there's been things that have come out today around Saudi clubs being interested in Sesko. And the first thing I thought was we must be close to agreeing, because I feel like when you're in talks and then all of a sudden somebody else is magically interested in the player, it's mostly for leverage for the selling club to make it seem like there's more interest so that they can try to drive the price up. I do think that the club are pretty set on Sesko being around 60 million, because I'm sorry, in a year, he's not jumped up from 50 million to 80, 90 million. He just hasn't. And so I do think Arsenal need to hold firm if they do feel like they have the player, so that they can, again, utilize the money for other things. I think obviously we want things to go really fast, because it's like we want to see the players come in, because you want that uncertainty around, our Arsenal going to get it done or not done. But if we want to get in 3 attackers, then we're going to need to negotiate some of these deals down. I think the first thing is to make sure that you don't have to pay Zubimendi's release clause up front. And then you want to make sure that you're not paying 80, 90 million for Sesko, but you're paying maybe 60, right? And so Leipzig are entertaining Saudi clubs, probably in an attempt to make Arsenal feel like they need to pay more for Sesko. And so I think we're pretty close to the end. And Hand of Arsenal has pretty much said the same thing, that we're close to the end. Saudi links are being driven by RB Leipzig. Nothing really worry about. He wants to stay in Europe. He's totally bought into, leading the line for Arsenal, blah, blah, blah. And so some point this week, we'll probably get some sort of indication of that deal coming to a close. And that deal is really important for us to, I think, understand where we're going to go with the left wing. Because if, different left wingers cost different things. And I think, Nico Williams does seem cheap, but when you realize that you're paying the release clause and those wages, he's actually the most expensive out of pretty much everyone we're linked to. More expensive than Rodrigo, definitely more expensive than what Barcola or Leao would cost. So depending on how much we pay for Sesko will probably indicate what we can spend on left wing. So I do kind of want Arsenal to take maybe another week or so to get the deal down just a wee bit more, so that we can get the best possible left wing that we can get, Johnny D says, so basically no news. Got it. Thanks. Take care. Sorry. So yeah, if you wanted like a big thing, like maybe not today, but if you can't stay, thank you for at least like popping in. I appreciate it. Victor says Leipzig need to chill out. I expect a here we go in about a week or two. Making the Zubimendi payment in installments will actually open up more doors to get more players. Exactly. And I think we'll wait until the Club World Cup to make a decision on left wing, which kind of makes sense, because we know that probably our number one option is at a club that's playing in the Club World Cup. So we know we're interested in both Sane and Rodrigo, and both of them are in the Club World Cup. So pretty sure their clubs are going to want them still around for those tournaments. So I do think it's going to take a little bit longer to get more clarity on left wing, but getting that fee down for Sesko is going to be important. Rodrigo is still our number one option, but there's also been some, more clarity on who our left wing options are. And I had retweeted it, and it had come from, what is that sound? So Arsenal are also keen to bolster their attacking areas. The North London Giants are willing to spend big on a quality forward. The Gunners have been heavily linked to Nico Williams and Rodrigo, but appears they are also in the race for Barcola. There is no reason why Arsenal should not be able to get a top quality left wing. That is where the abundance of options are. That is where the quality is, where the striker market maybe isn't, as big. We're pretty much choosing between Sesko and Gyökeres. You can choose between Leao is available. Barcola might be available depending on the fee and how PSG see his future and how he sees his future. Nico Williams is definitely available if you want to pay the price. Rodrigo could end up being available depending on what happens with, Xabi Alonso. And then you still have players like Adamo Lookman that's available. Maybe Gordon is available if you like that player. So to me, there's no excuse. Left wing, that is you can go any direction with that, and you should be able to get a top quality player. And so I've told you guys before, my number one options are Nico Williams and like top 1 and 1, basically like 1A and 1B is Nico Williams and Rodrigo, then Barcola, then like Leao, and then like the rest of the group, the Gordons and those kinds, whatever. But there's just no excuse. Just looking at the Rodrigo comps, I've been watching comps of him ever since we've been linked to him, and it's just he just raises the level so much. It's not even really so much about Martinelli per se or Trossard. It's just the level that you have to play at or to be at Real Madrid is just a completely different level, I feel. And he's a player that has stepped up in the past to score big goals in big games. So it's not just about he looks good on the ball, aesthetics and all that shit. It's like he can actually change our fortunes when we're in those big games and we need somebody to come up with a big moment. He's incredibly creative, which will take a lot of the burden off of Odegaard, who I do think will have a good season next season. But having a left wing that can come in and come central and also create almost a double 10 effect will help us. And he just will add a sparkle that I think our attack desperately needs. So yeah, I think there's no excuse. Nico Williams is there, Leao is there, so yeah. Errol says, just we're not getting any of them. Why would you think that we're not going to get any of them? I mean, is it just fear because Arsenal didn't get anything last summer? Because to me, there's too much good quality information from good sources that say we're going to get a left wing. So why are you thinking that we're not going to get one? I feel like people are just a little bit maybe playing too hard onto the like negative thing, and I'm somebody that, can get quite pessimistic about Arsenal, but we're going to get a left wing. We're going to get one of our main options. Like, why wouldn't we? Leo says the cost of a good player that is in demand never goes down within the same transfer window. Their cost typically goes up. So why this waiting? Dre says, let's go. I think it's not about waiting. It's, well, one, you do have to see if Rodrigo is available. So you can't just, if they're not on the market, if he talks to Xabi Alonso, and I'm pretty sure that they already kind of know, but the news is always like a couple of days late, but you can't just go in and get a player that's not on the market. He needs to talk to Xabi Alonso, see what he sees for his future, where is he going to play? And then from there, if they decide that they want to keep him for the Club World Cup, then we can't just extract him. The selling club does still have, the ability to stop things from happening to their players. So if he's our number one option, we have to wait and to see if he's actually on the market. I'm sure we think that he could be and he would be interested, or else we wouldn't be waiting. But have to see from that. And then from there, then if you can't get him, then you can move on something else. So I think it's pretty obvious why you'd be waiting. I don't necessarily feel like it's about the fee going up or whatever, and also there is a Club World Cup tax, that a lot of clubs are seeing come out of the woodwork, because if you want to take a player away from a club that's participating in the Club World Cup, then they were putting additional like 10 million on, 20 million on the fee to get it done quicker. So we weren't going to be in that situation, because we're not in that situation. We don't have to necessarily rush. So yeah, I don't really see why it's a big deal that we're 2 weeks in and it's not done yet. We at least know the targets. I think for me, being in the dark about who the targets were was a little bit jarring, because it was like, okay, well, what direction are we going in? We know what direction we're going in. There's a pretty clear and obvious reason why we'd be waiting for Rodrigo, because we need to know whether he's available or not. So I don't see what the big deal is. Bro Pro says, but if we just get a pure touchline winger, we need another attacking midfielder. Unfindable says a left wing maybe, but a good one. Why wouldn't we get one of the good ones? I don't really gotta. I don't see why we wouldn't get one, but I get, some people are still like very entrenched in the negativity. That's like, okay, well, we had that failed window last window, so we're definitely gonna just not get anything or get, one of the bad wingers, but I don't see why that would happen. I don't think we need to be down in the dumps just yet. Telvin says, I think if we get a good left winger attacker, then the attacking will be good. AD says, people think we have no pull. Brian says, Saka and Declan starting for England today. We have to ban them from the national team. Our lack of attention to Turkey still baffles me. I don't know if I can get over it. Well, I tend not to try to get too invested in players that we're never linked to, because then you're unnecessarily almost, disappointed in a transfer that was never really on the cards. I don't really know what to tell people. Like, the only team that was really super interested in him was Man City. So I don't know. I need to save my energy for being like upset about players that we were meant to get or that we've been linked to and we didn't get. If I just get frustrated about every player that I think is good and we don't get, and I'm upset about that, then I'm just going to be mad all the time, because players go to other teams all the time. We was never going to be in for Shirky because of Ethan. This left wing market is very fruitful. If we don't get a good winger, something is wrong. I don't think there's a reason to be doomers. Not yet. I mean, I could understand if, we're getting towards time to start to get into preseason, which I think preseason is like, right around the end of Club World Cup time. Club World Cup ends on like July 15th or something. So if we get around that time and, shit is still funky and we're like, what the fuck is going on, then I can understand it more then. But, a week ago, it was kind of like, what the fuck are we doing? Why don't we know between Gyökeres and Sesko what's happening? Now we know it's Sesko. Backup goalkeeper's done. Zubimendi's done. We know what our targets are for left wing. Those are fabulous options. You really can't go wrong with any one of those. If you get Barcola, if you get Nico Williams, if you get Rodrigo, you're shitting in high cotton. You're happy person. So yeah, right now, not really feeling the dooms, but I get that it's, for some people, it's like, we need to be upset. Like, I get it. Simon says, if one of Rodrigo or Nico has to be in an Arsenal shirt when the season starts, no excuses. Preseason starts around July 23rd. I'd rather budget player like Watkins and get a bad boy attacking mid like Simmons or Eze and a left wing. I mean, I feel like a lot of people would prefer to do that, but Arteta spent $100 million on Declan Rice and sees him as our starting left center mid, and has backfilled that position with Marino. I just think, regardless of how we would build the team, I think a lot of us, if we could build the team from scratch, we would do things completely different. But I just don't think that Arsenal see attacking mid as like a priority, because they have Max and Ethan coming through, which, as much as Arsenal fans don't like to hear it, they are going to take that into consideration. You can't say in one breath that you think that they're going to be these world-class players. Max is on the same page as like Lamine Yamal types, and then not kind of plan for where they're going to be at. And then on the other side, you have a 65 million pound signing that is, going to be playing striker, but is also able to play attacking mid on the left-hand side. They've also spent about 40 million on Marino, and then your marquee signing, you're also building the midfield around the idea that he's going to be in that position. So we're never going to be in the market for an attacking mid. And to be quite honest, knowing what the midfield is going to be like, because Arteta buying Zubimendi pretty much seals what our midfield is going to look like, no matter if you like it or not. It just makes it so much clearer who we need to replace in the starting 11, and it's definitely getting a striker in and a left wing. It was just never, I know people are like, we have to get that done, but like, Ethan is going to play a major role this season. They're integrating Max, and when you spend almost 100 million on two left-sided midfielders, they're going to be prioritized over going out there and spending 70 million on Xavi Simmons. Let's see. Leaf says, Garnacho is left wing. Is he good enough for Arsenal? Are you interested? No. Jonathan says, do you enjoy covering the transfer window? All the rumors are draining. I love it. I love the transfer window. It's just you're either really into it or you're not. But I just feel like you have to think about it from the perspective of you're probably going to report on pretty much nothing for the 90% of the time, but the 10% that things are happening is just so exciting. And, last summer was such a bummer. And I just feel like this summer hopefully will be different. And so, yeah, like you either really like, I think you're either somebody that really loves the transfer window or you're somebody that's like, I just want to see them in the shirt. Like, I really don't care. If you're one of those types of people, it is quite draining, but I love the transfer window, not even just from an Arsenal perspective, but I love the dominoes falling. I love the whole push and pull of the negotiations and how they throw out stuff to try to get the price down or price up. I love it, so I don't really get drained by following it or reporting it to you guys or talking to you guys about it. I can talk about transfers forever. It doesn't bother me. Telvin says, bye, marquee left wing attacker, then Watkins as a striker. If we sold Martinelli, then I'd like Garnacho, but under any other circumstances, no. Valeria says, are you worried that if we move slowly in the window, other clubs may snatch all the really good players? We are buying from the same pool, really, and others are moving fast. Well, here just to put a little bit of perspective on everybody else is moving fast. I think only City have multiple deals done, actually done, announced. I think they have Aitnuri and Reinders, and then Turkey is on his way. But Liverpool only, there's Kirkes is still not done, I think. Maybe that one's done, but Frimpong is all that they've announced. Wirtz is still up in the air. So nothing else is done for them. Chelsea have only announced Delap. Ekitike fell through today. Jamie Gittins back and forth with Dortmund. Mike Mignon deal fell through today. So they only have one signing done, really. Tottenham have nothing done. Manchester United have just Cunha done. And Mbomo still not done yet. And, Gyökeres is still kind of up in the air. We have 2 deals done. We know that we're negotiating for Sesko, and our left wing options, we know what they are. So are we really moving much slower than everybody else, or are we just looking at everybody else's grass? I get it that they did get a jump on us first. I think City and Liverpool, before the window even started, they had a jump on us for sure. But now that we've gotten involved, I don't really see that much of a difference from where we are and where they're at. We all kind of have things open and things are falling through, negotiations are happening. But if we get to the end of the Club World Cup and we still don't have Sesko, then maybe I'll start to be like, oh, we're moving really slow. But outside of looking at everybody else, we're 2 weeks in, we have 2 deals done, and we know we're going to get some sort of probably update on Sesko this week or maybe next week. I think when we got Jesus in, it was mid-July when he was finally announced. And that was our first signing in a window where we move fast. So I think a lot of it is looking at other people. And I'm definitely criminal for doing that, looking at other people and being like, why aren't we moving? Why aren't we moving? But I think context is key. And we're really not far behind everyone else. I just think they have a lot more noise. And because we're not getting linked to a bunch of people and we can't see the bids going in and we're just what the fuck is going on? It feels like we're so far behind, but we're really not. We're really not. You know what I mean? Also, we knew what our links were or what our window was going to look like before we even got into it. I think the other teams are they're more finding out who their targets are. We've known who our targets are, so it's just a different thing. You know what I mean? Wow, no one has faith in Garnacho. I expect a very good season from him in the Prem or wherever he goes. One of the main reasons why I don't want Garnacho is I don't want the circus. I really don't want the circus. I think his brother is atrocious. They think that there's something that they're not. I don't really want Garnacho at the club, to be honest. So there's too many good options, I think, at this stage, so to be going after somebody for 70 million, that's not necessarily any better than anything else, so yeah. Let's see. The transfer window is a de facto gossip session. What's not to love about it? Osanuga says, did you hear Rio? He doesn't rate Gyökeres, might have to sell my stocks. Well, Rio is not known to have like always the best, footballing opinion, by the way. He's not somebody that I would say, like, if he says no, then I'm out, but I do think every fan base that's been linked to him has had a little bit of caution when they start to do the scouting. They start to look at, the amount of players that come over from that league and how it translates. And so I think kind of like, everybody has those things, but, every transfer is a risk and has like an element of this may not work out. But I still do believe that Gyökeres could come to the Premier League and do really well. But I do think he has to be set up for success. And I think your style of play has to suit him. And one of my bigger concerns outside of the goals, because if you score like 40 goals in one league or 50 goals almost, then, you would imagine that at least half of those are going to translate, and you're still in a good place. But my concern is, how would Arteta make sure that he's playing his best football for us? And Arteta doesn't play with strikers like him, so yeah, I think there were concerns there, and I'm not surprised that now the concerns are now like going over to Man United, because now they're looking at him. But the reality is you could do a lot worse. You could do a lot worse. We're in a window where the striker market is not great. So, you kind of have to just take what's there, and make the best educated guess. And Gyökeres is not the worst player that you can go after. So I still think he'll be fine, Yo-Yo says replacing Martinelli with Garnacho would be horrific. I agree. I just would never want that. That's just horrendous. Like, I just can't do it. I'm a real gunner says the trouble in our fan base is toxic. You only have to listen to Dan Potts and Turkish and like all these people. I just think that like, because I was watching like a Chelsea fan today on his live talking about their deals falling through, mostly just like laugh, but he didn't sound too dissimilar to some of our fans when things don't go our way, or when you're not quite sure that the board or the manager or whoever's not doing the right things. And I think there's always just a section of fans that, are always going to have concerns when what they want differs from what the club is doing. And so outside of people that I feel like want Arsenal to fail so that they can have something to bitch about, I think for the most part, especially like from Turkish and Dan Potts' perspective, I don't really know Lee or Curtis Shaw like at all, but I think they just want the club to win. And so they're very distrustful of the board and Mikel at this stage. So can't really blame them, but yeah, I don't want to really panic just yet. Let's see. I can't believe the Gyökeres debate has been going on for months. YouTubers should let it go. Zach 10 says, best way I've seen Rodrigo describe Jesus with less strength but better finishing. Listen, I'm excited by the prospect of Rodrigo coming to Arsenal. I can't lie to you guys. I am a little gassed, and I don't want to be, because I don't really want to get invested in something that may not happen, but I fear that I'm starting to become a little bit invested. I just think he's a fantastic little player. I really do. And he just has the thing, he has the thing. He glides past players. He has good, footballing IQ. The creativity is there. He just floats my boat. Like, I really do like him, but I also really like Nico Williams as well. And I also think Barcola is a really, really good player too. So I really wouldn't be upset at getting any of those, but think Rodrigo is my favorite, but listen, we may not get him. So I don't want to get too bogged down, or too like locked down on it, so yeah. Keenan says people aren't ready for Rodrigo. He is going to put up 40 GA in all competitions in his first season. There's just so many like clips that you see that he just does things that I know our players can't do. And I really don't, it's not about shitting on players. I just feel like he just does certain things and I'm like, I just know our players could never do that because you just have to have that in you, and that confidence, whatever. So yeah, I like the Rodrigo links and I like the Barcola links as well. I like the Williams links as well. I know Bayern are also incredibly interested in both Nico Williams and Barcola. Those are the top of their list. I thought for a minute that they were going to get Leao, which would open up the door for Martinelli to go to AC Milan because that's who, they would maybe want to replace him. But it looks like Bayern have all but kind of given up on Leao. And I wonder what's going on with Leao because he's always kind of linked to a move like lightly. And then all of a sudden, like it just nothing ever happens. So I'm not quite sure why that is. What does that mean? But they have Barcola and Williams very high on their list. And so the good thing for me is that I feel like that means that they probably are available. If they've held talks to a certain extent, that they know that there is a formula to get them out of the clubs that they're at, which means that there's a formula for us to get them out of the clubs that they're at. So I think that's the biggest positive from Bayern being interested in the players that we're interested in. But we know Rodrigo is the number one option, so yeah. Just wasn't Haaland a risk when he came? Not saying Sesko is Haaland. Every I think transfer has an element of risk to it. And I think Haaland is pretty much as big of a sure thing as you could possibly get, though. I just think it would be really hard for Haaland not to succeed because he's just an elite finisher. Give him the ball and he'll put it in the back of the net. He may not be a great link-up player, but he's so elite in other things that it doesn't matter. But every player has an element of risk, and I'm sure that Arsenal have gone through. Arsenal, Berta, everybody has gone through and with a fine-tooth comb went through all the risks attached to both Gyökeres and Sesko, and they've come out feeling like Sesko is the better option. Their season is on the line. This is a big decision to make. Like, I'm not saying that it's just Sesko and it's fine and like nothing bad can happen off of the back of it. Of course, like it could fail and then it's going to look crazy. But, I just have to hope that they've done their due diligence. But most of our big signings, I feel like big like starter signings, like whether the fee was big or not is null and void. But I feel like outside of, depending on who you talk to, Kai Havertz, I think most of our big, like this is going to be a starter has pretty much gone well for us. So maybe they do know what they're talking about or they know what they're doing. So we'll see. We shall see. Hey Jess, so the market is closed now until the 16th. I expect an announcement at the 12th midnight on the 15th. I want new players in for preseason. Well, I'm sure Zubimendi and Kepa will be in for preseason, and probably Sesko as well. I think we'll still have to wait just a wee bit on the left wing. And if we want Sane, we're going to have to wait until after Club World Cup as well. So, maybe July we'll be looking more towards the other attacking signings. But if we start preseason and Zubimendi and Sesko is in there, I think I'll be pretty, happy because I know whoever we're getting for left wing is not somebody that I would be afraid of not having like the longest preseason. So we shall see. I think it's 50-50 between Gyökeres and Osimhen. I give one of them a 60% chance of playing in the Prem next season. Let's see. We'll get Sesko next week. Leo says Haaland was a top striker prior to coming to City. Yeah, I think there was pretty much like no chance that he was going to fail at City. I think it was just an odd fit because when you go from false nines and, that kind of stuff, then, it's just a different thing when you have Haaland coming in. But he just made all the difference, didn't he? I am seeing that. I think you guys had said that, but somebody said Saka and Rice are starting, but also Lewis Skelly is starting. And I'm just like, guys, fuck this game. Walk around, half play, do not get injured. This is not important, just No offense, but just kind of walk around. Like, I really don't want to see them playing hard. I'm so sorry. I know if you're English, you're like, what? But like, I don't. Um, let's see. Saudi interest in Sesko exists, but player wants to play in Europe. Arsenal remain in talks with Leipzig and are sticking to wanting more than 80 million euros. So yeah, we're pretty much, I think, locked in terms of just trying to figure out the fee, you know. So yeah, yeah, I can tell that probably the timeline is not going to be happy. I don't know. I don't know how. Once I know that a player is going somewhere, I can kind of instantly detach and just be like, okay, because I'm just like, as long as Arsenal are doing what they're meant to be doing, then I'm less interested in what other people are doing. But I just fear that this Turkey signing is like really rattling our fan base, and I get it, but like we've known for probably about 2 weeks that he's going to City. At some stage we need to like release. You know, I get that he's a great player, he's a banger type player, but like we have to release it. Like you're just going to be so fucking miserable if you just are constantly looking at our rivals and what they're doing. You know, we need to do what we're doing. Keenan says exhibition matchup 70% speed. Bum this Zubimendi talk. We need Rodrigo. Holland played for Dortmund, RB Leipzig, Arsenal first country second. You guys are talking to each other. Zach 10 says, if we got Zubi, Kepa, Rodrigo, and Sesko, what position would you want a fifth final signing? I'm really interested in getting the backup for Saka, and because the idea when we were looking at Mbomo, I thought that that was a really smart idea. Somebody that can play false nine, but also backup Saka, but gives us like instant threat off of the bench. It's not that I don't think that we have that, but for the most part, you know, for the last couple of seasons, it's pretty much been Trossard or bust, and I think we need more firepower off of the bench. I think we need to not be afraid to rattle the cage a little bit and to shake the table. We need to bring in somebody that if Ethan's long-term future is in midfield, then I think there's nothing wrong with bringing in somebody that could, you know, primarily play off right wing, but also play maybe in other positions, maybe also play attacking mid. I really like the idea of Mbomo. I also really like the idea of Kudus. I do. I know what they're trying to do with Sane. I think it's pretty much similar. He can play on both sides. He can play in the 10 in a pinch. You know, he's primarily proven, you know him, and Arteta's worked with him before. But I think if you want to get that physical ball carrier, goal scorer, the type of player that if they're warming up on the sideline and you've already been chasing Saka for 70 minutes, this is kind of like the last player you want coming on. I feel like Kudus would be a really good option for Arsenal on a cut price deal from West Ham, you know, because they're a little bit desperate to get rid of him now. I would love that type of signing. I just think it makes all the bit of sense for us and for people that are like, we need another attacking mid. We know he can play attacking mid on the right or the left. He's not necessarily somebody that can play left wing, but he can play 10, 9 wing positions. You know, I think that'd be the perfect signing for us because ultimately, when I look at it, I'm thinking if we're fucked and we need a goal, I need somebody coming off the bench that I feel like is going to give us that boost and also keep the rest of our attackers honest. I think he could do that. Just imagine if, you know, obviously Havertz is going to start the season, but if you have Sesko, who you can bring off of the bench, you also, you know, have Marino, who we know can give you goals off the bench, Trossard, Ethan, and then someone else. We're not looking at our bench like, what the fuck, how are we going to score a goal? We're looking like, all right, there's goals off of the bench, you know? So that's probably what I'd be looking to do, especially because I feel like that's what Arsenal want to do. And I mean, it's not like this is so surprising, but if I had to choose between Kudus and Zane, I would choose Kudus, you know, but because there's even the option to play Kudus down the middle. Could you imagine Rodrigo, Saka, and Kudus front three? Listen, Rodrigo, Sesko, Kudus, unreal attacking depth. I was never sold on this Kudus guy. It's more dubious now that West Ham want to get rid of him, avoid at all costs. I mean, West Ham got a new coach, Potter. Maybe he's not a Potter type of player. I wouldn't just cast somebody aside because West Ham had a bad season and pretty much all their attackers had a bad season. And now they want to move Kudus on probably to create funds so that they can reinvest into players that Potter wants. To me, that's more of a market opportunity than anything. If we wanted him before he got, because we wanted him and we didn't get him because we couldn't sell somebody. So we wanted him before. So there's prior links and prior, admiration for the player. Then in his first season, he absolutely smoked. He was so good. He still smoked us this season in a bad season. I'm so sorry, but that is not a player that I'm just like, well, he had a bad season. So, and they want to move him on. So he's probably shit. There's people in the comment section asking for Garnacho and trying to get, and come on now. Paketa Kudus were the talk of the town once. 80 says, don't forget we have Ethan and Dauman wanting minutes next season. Karthik says, I think Xavi Simons would be quality signing. He can take minutes off of Saka and Odegaard if needed. Olu says, Zubimendi, Rodrigo, Sesko, Morgan Rogers, and I'm good. I just don't see a world where we could get Aston Villa to get us Morgan Rogers. If I know they're in financial problems, but the reality is just because you're in financial problems doesn't mean you're going to sell off your best player, so that's their crown jewel. That's their main guy. And so I would imagine that they're going to try to offload the Ollie Watkins and the Jacob Ramseys and the Constas and these guys. I don't see them getting rid of Morgan Rogers. So yeah, but I mean, he would be a good player to have for sure. West Ham, no, Kudus has lost interest in them. They have to sell. Exactly. Can Barcola finish his dinner? Great dribbler, but hot and cold finisher. I just feel like, what do you really want in a winger? I think from my perspective, I know that it's like, well, we need a goal scoring winger, but I actually feel like more than just goal scoring, or even maybe just a little bit more important is the creativity. I think we need somebody that can feed a striker that's really good aerially, has good box movement, and it just needs service. And that's Sesko. I think we lack service into the box for a traditional number 9. And so I can deal with, an attacker on the left-hand side not coming up with as many goals if they're coming up with a lot of assists, because I know that Saka is going to score a lot of goals. So I'm not too concerned about Barcola not being like the best finisher right off the bat, because I know just his sheer pace, his tricky ability 1v1 is going to create goal scoring opportunities for other people, whether that's, getting us penalties or, breaking down blocks or getting people on the counterattack and then giving it to somebody else. I can kind of deal with the hot and cold finishing if he has more tools in his toolbox. The biggest problem we have with Martinelli is that all he can do is finish. That's it. And when he's not doing that, he's a really hard to watch. But even with the hot and cold finishing from somebody like Nico Williams and Barcola, you never quite feel as empty-handed as you do when Martinelli's hot and cold when he's finishing, because they just have so much more that they can do. Earn free kicks, earn, penalties, can wear players down 1v1, stuff like that. And so I think I'm more concerned about that, especially because I know that they're young and the finishing will come. With Rodrigo, I expect the package to be done. His finishing is already going to be pretty much what it is. His, 1v1 is kind of what it is. We just need to get him into a position where he feels confident and he's playing on his right side. Nico Williams and Barcola are still more project-ish types. But the reality is the amount of talent that they have and the amount of different tools that they have to utilize is so much better than what we have currently. Olu says, I like the idea of Barcola, not going to lie. Lady says, also just being dangerous and rattling defenders. Nelly doesn't really provide that. I mean, when fullbacks are going on podcasts and laughing when your name is mentioned, you don't have it like that. And I just feel like, obviously, we can't just, it's not just about that, but he's just so limited. And there's never a day where you watch like Barcola or Nico Williams and the fullback doesn't have to be on job, where Martinelli kind of, do you really have to be like on your P's and Q's? Like, I don't know. Yo-Yo says, Barcola, Rodrigo, Williams, all upgrade on Nelly. Leo benched Martinelli the last time we fought for a title. People must stop defending the indefensible. Chemist Saint says, Barcola can make something out of nothing. I'll take that. For me, Rodrigo, Barcola, Nico as the order of preference, which I totally like. I can definitely see that too. Like, I know people that have like Barcola at the very top. Like, I just don't think you can really go wrong with those options, because whatever deficiencies they have, they're such a clear upgrade on what we have that we'll just eat. Like, I just know we have our experienced like guy. We have him. It's Saka. He is our like Dembele player up front, that we really rely upon to get us the goals and assists. He needs a striker, to feed. And then if the other winger is a little bit more inexperienced but has a lot of talent, we could work with that. What I can't work with is banging the ball up between, your feet, ping ponging it back and forth, running out the end line with your head down, and just kicking up against somebody's shin to get a corner. I can't do it. Can't do it. Agreed. They all provide us with solutions in attack. Barcola's pace is scary. Please, people, you can't be watching these new crop of wingers and still rate Martinelli. I just don't see, like, I did see somebody saying, like, and to be fair, they're a stats person. So stats people don't always have the full picture because they don't use their eye test ever. But somebody literally saying, based on stats, it's going to be really hard to replace Martinelli, because what the stats basically say is it really like over indexes his completeness in terms of like, it's not about the goals in the 1v1. It's about, the defensive recoveries and all that kind of shit, and his crit, like when you look at those radars, creating chances could just be, kicking the ball against somebody's shin and then getting a corner or an aimless ball into the box, so when you look at it from the stats, Martinelli looks a lot better than what he is. But when you're watching with your eyes, you can see. And so people sitting there saying that he's going to be so hard to upgrade upon, I think are just looking at it from a statistical standpoint. And I really don't want a winger where the main thing you're talking about is, well, what about, do they track back? Are they going to do the defensive work off the ball? What about the repeatability of the sprints that he's going to do randomly up and down the pitch when he's going out the end line? I don't give a fuck about that shit. What are you doing on the ball, buddy? What are you going to do for me on the ball? I want to know that. That's what I want to know. I don't want to know about defensive recoveries and shit like that. So tired of hearing about the main quality that our player has is they run a lot. What about what they do with the ball? I'm tired of that shit. I can't do it. Nelly could be a great option off the bench, though. He can put in a defensive shift in when we're managing a lead in a big game. I was doing the math, and I don't really know exactly how they're going to integrate Dauman into the team, but 25 players, if you bring in 5 players, then one of those wingers has got to go, because you already got players like Zinchenko out, Jorginho's gone, Tierney, Fabio, you're expecting to go, Sambi, Nuno, Tavares, and then Fulham still wants Reece Nelson, and he'll probably go. So considering all those players are going and you're expecting them to go, if you wanted to bring in 5 players, meaning you get that third attacker, then you're going to have to sacrifice somebody. And one of the things that I keep mentioning is that if we bring in a Rodrigo or a Barcola or a Nico Williams, essentially you're going to have 3 left winger options, and you're still like senior, good, reliable options in 1 right wing, because neither one of Trossard or Martinelli is good on the right. I don't care how many times people are like, wasn't that bad. It's not good. Okay. We need a right winger, to really step in for Saka if we're going to be serious about this thing, So if you take away one of those left wing options, then you can reinvest into a right winger. Now you have Saka and maybe Kudus, and then you have Rodrigo and Trossard. Or if you want to keep Martinelli, Rodrigo and Martinelli. One of them has to go to even it up, if you want to get that third one. But if you don't get the third one, then both of them will stay, So the numbers would mean somebody would have to go. And so, but I want that third attacker, so I'm okay with one of them leaving. I really am. Sorry, somebody has to cut. HM says, what's the hate on the left wings? Back Arteta, we trust him. AD says, dude never looks up. I would rather sacrifice Trossard unless we're signing 3 attackers, then yes, sell Nelly. Yeah, I mean, if we're not getting the 3rd attacker, there's no reason to even get rid of Trossard. You're just getting rid of Trossard for the sake of it. I'm not getting rid of Trossard unless we're getting a 3rd attacker. I'm just sorry. Even Martinelli, I'm just not. I just don't see a reason why we're just getting rid of those players if we're not getting the 3rd attacker. It doesn't make sense to me. We're still limited in options up front because you're not even going to have Jesus. So essentially, if you were to get rid of Trossard and still not get the 3rd attacker, you're pretty much saying that on the bench, you're going to have Sesko, no Jesus because he's injured, and that's pretty much it. So Jesus and it's just not enough. So you still have to keep someone. Regardless, I feel like the only reason that you would sell one of Martinelli or Trossard is to get that 3rd attacker. Otherwise, you might as well just keep both of them. And as much as people do not like Trossard, I implore you to look at his numbers since he's been here. It's rare to find a backup player, somebody that consistently comes off of the bench and comes up with big goals. To me, he's incredibly valuable for a team that does not have that type of attacking depth. But if you were to bring in that attacking depth, I'd be okay with him going, but not unless you get that. I love the fact that the club are actively looking for quality at right wing cover for Saka, Zane or Kudus, while also looking for a starting left wing that screams Berta. And yeah, I mean, do we want Saka's legs to just, the muscles on his legs to just fall off the bone, or do we want to protect him? I think they need to take last season as a big fucking warning of what we look like without our key players and protect them with good depth that actually can step in and we can still maintain the same levels. We haven't had that. And there's been like a caution around backfilling, even just really making the attack better from a starting perspective, but even just backfilling, those positions with quality. And so there's plenty of games to go around. There's plenty of options that you can, if you have the right type of right winger, kind of different options that you can put them in. Sane is somebody that can play off of the left as well. He can also play 10 in a pinch. Like I said, Kudus can play 9 and right wing and also attacking mid. If you get one of those players, there's more than enough minutes to go around. Players are going to get injured. So I think it's a smart play, but I do envision one of the other players to go. And I would be interested, like very, very interested to know who the club is more interested in moving on. Because if you're giving Trossard a new deal, I do feel like that kind of makes it seem like Martinelli might be the one that's going. He's also the one that's probably the easiest to shift for a good fee. And so, yeah, very interesting. Arsenal have not really sold a player that hasn't been true dead wood in a while. If ever, somebody that's not so obvious that you need to move on, that still has value. We haven't seen it. That would be a huge difference. That would be definitely Berta, right there, putting his, his experience on the table there. Because if it was up to the fans, they would keep Martinelli until it was so obvious that he has no value, and then be upset that nobody wants to pay 50 million for a 27-year-old Martinelli. Whereas, good clubs, I do think they move some of these players on when they have value, reinvest in the club, and then you don't really see the difference. So very, very interesting. Shamaria says, isn't Martinelli's contract running down? I'm not hearing any negotiations. Silence is loud. You ain't any better 12th men like Trossard. If we bring in a Rodrigo, I'm keeping Leo and sell Martinelli, who will also bring in a decent amount of money. You also have to think like who's going to be a better option off of the bench. Martinelli has pretty much been a starter since he's been at Arsenal, outside of like the season where he was injured and he had to share time with Emile. But as soon as he got fit, Emile went to the bench and Martinelli was starting. So is he somebody that you think you can trust without a run of games? Because we know Trossard, you could start him or not, you're going to get goals from him off of the bench. As much as people don't like Trossard, one thing I know for sure, you taking him up, bringing him off the bench, he's going to score. He's most likely going to score. So who's the better option off of the bench? Martinelli's on like 200,000 pounds a week. Do you want to get those wages off the books? Get a 40 million for him, and then Trossard, you only have to bump him up to like 120,000 pounds a week or something like that. Cause I feel like he's on some nonsense, like 90, with the idea that you're going to move him on soon as well. Like, I just feel like there's a lot of logistical things, and like Bert is probably playing around with the pieces, and it does feel like there's more options available to us now that it's not Edu, because he was pretty much like a one-trick pony. And so I'm kind of interested to see, how things go. John says Leo is like a Stina Blackstenius for the men. He's just very reliable when it comes to scoring off of the bench. And again, unless we're going to really backfill those positions with quality, I'm not that comfortable with letting him go, because as frustrated as you could be, like with him, he's come up with massive goals for us in a pinch. So yeah. Leo is better off of the bench. Martinelli is better staying on the bench. So yeah. But yeah, it's just more about the pieces and what they think they can get done in this window. And so I'm excited to see what they do. Syed says, it's not about playing Saka every game. It's about changing our play style. Mo Salah and most of the Liverpool starters played every game. Arteta needs to learn. I mean, that's definitely like a side conversation. I do think that we need to feel comfortable with Saka not starting every single game, though. Or if we're up 6-0, 5-0, he shouldn't be playing full 90s. I know Liverpool feel comfortable playing Salah every single game for every minute, but I don't think we need to follow their template verbatim. I think we should protect Saka just a little bit more. But I do agree that Arteta should, maybe modify the amount that he defends, so that we can keep him fresh. MM says, I'd keep Trossard just for what he did to Poro. Geez, some of these wages compared to output this club, though. Yeah, I think wages do play a pretty big part, and I do think that the wages should reflect the output of players. I know some people are trying to put it out there that the wages don't really matter and all this kind of stuff, but I'm like, but they do, though, because for Arsenal, the wage bill, they want to keep it at a certain level, and it's just difficult to do that when you have players that are on super high wages that are not earning those wages really. So yeah, I think the wages make a difference. I think just as, players that come with a big price tag, the wages also come into play. And I would love to see Saliba and Saka on the highest wages, soon. I would praise Berta a lot if we start selling well. We've been historically bad at doing that. We have to fix up ASAP. Also, if what's that boy's name? Teo Hernandez, if he leaves, AC Milan and goes to Atletico, Zinni has been offered to AC Milan. So, maybe it's not just BVB, but maybe also AC Milan might be in play to sell. So yeah, the sales are also going to be interesting, because it's like I think we have high expectations for Berta, so hopefully he can deliver. John says Trossard with big goals versus Bayern, City, Liverpool, Spurs, 2 assists versus PSG. Listen, it may not be pretty. He may frustrate you. He may have gotten Saliba sent off in the game against Bournemouth, but take all that away and you're so right. Look at these freaking goals that he has, so yeah, he's a really good squad player. If we do get rid of him, I hope we know what we're doing. Because I don't think Martinelli is going to have that same effect. I'll be honest. I just don't think he gives squad player to me, or somebody without a run of games that's going to be effective. Just boom, just like that. So I can't lie. Zinni will do well in Italy. Havertz being our highest earner is sacrilege. He's gone Saudi. And Lookman, do you think so? Oh no, you guys are talking to each other. So yeah, I've kind of covered all the things. Oh, except for Ornstein also said that Guehi is really hard on the high on our list if we do go for a center back, which we've been linked to him since the beginning of time. So I'm not surprised that we're linked to him again. We wanted Dean Huijsen, and so they're seeing Guehi as another option, especially because he only has 1 year left on his deal at Crystal Palace. But here's my thing. He's definitely, I don't know if I'd necessarily see it happening because it's a World Cup year. So, you know, do you really want to be sitting behind Saliba and Gabriel when you know you need to make the England team? And I know he's playing a role now in that team, but ultimately, like, they have quite a few center backs that can come back into the fold, and maybe he gets left out. So, I really honestly do not care about the center back position. I think it's more than fine to allow Kivior to stay and to kind of just overlook this, just, if it gets, to a spot where, around December, we know that we need to get somebody in because we've struggled with keeping them fit. Fair enough, get somebody in January, but to me, this is just so not a priority when you look at the amount of players that we have that can play back there. I know we're losing Dinny and we know we lost Tierney, but they didn't play any games. They didn't play any games. They really didn't play any games, guys. Like, they really didn't. And so somebody else can take those minutes. Hopefully Calafiori can take those minutes. Maybe Tamiyasu will grace us with his presence. But if there's one position that I feel like we could probably go without, it's probably the center back, at least maybe until January if things get sticky. But I really don't have much to give on this because I'm like, yeah, but what about left wing? Like, we've done center backs to death. Like, you have Kivior, Calafiori is there. He needs to maintain his fitness, but, you got players. No more defenders, please. Kivior has been better than Saliba since Gabriel got injured. How do we fare in midfield quality versus City and Liverpool currently? Harry Kane 1-0. I mean, I don't know. I think we're always gonna look at our midfield and think it's worse, So, that's a question for you guys to answer because we never really know. You can look at things on paper and think it's better, but it's ultimately the sum of its parts and how it all works together. I kind of feel like our midfield is probably going to be considered weaker than other people's, but it'll probably function better than other people's. So, McAllister, Wirtz, and Gravenberch, Cherky, Reinders, Rodri, Zubimendi, Odegaard, Rice. I think those are all really good. Maybe ours is just like marginally not as good. I don't know. So yeah, on paper, I think theirs looks better. But do I think that our players are maybe a little bit underrated? Maybe. Rice is one of the best, midfielders in the world. We've just acquired the best, probably 6 on the market. And Odegaard, I know he had a bad season, but when he's on it, there's not many players that are better than him either, So I'm expecting that midfield to eat down. Now, behind those players, I really do have like great belief in Ethan. I think, Marino, keep him away from our goal. He's probably okay. But maybe the depth isn't as amazing as the other teams. But like, do I really rate Kovacic that high? Like, I don't know. So yeah. I really like our midfield, so I'm probably the wrong person to ask. I think where we probably don't measure up as well is in attack. But yeah. Kwame says, so Jess, do we have the war chest to spend? No, I don't think so. I don't think there's a war chest. I feel like we have the same amount of money that we pretty much always have, 150 million or so. I don't know. Not that it matters, but I reckon we'll flip Kepa as a sell him for more than we signed him. Keepers are meant to age like fine wine. Let's see. Guehi could be a great deal at the end of the window, considering he's in his final year. And Palace will be desperate to recoup some money. I mean, it could be a great deal for us, but do you see him agreeing to come to Arsenal to sit behind Gabriel and Saliba? Because as much as I want to see Arteta rotate, I do think rotating our center back partnership is probably the last thing I think he's going to do. And it's probably the last thing I'm really wanting him to do. I'm not really desperate to see Saliba and Gabriel broken apart. So really you're looking at, maybe Arteta really hasn't done it, so unless Arteta can figure out a way to convince him that he's going to get enough minutes to keep his spot in the England squad, I think he'll go somewhere where he knows he's a starter or just stay at Palace. But that's just me. I'm sorry I had to watch some Barcola comps again. He gives me joy all the time. He's a nasty dribbler that you would forgive him for the missed chances. Maybe Arteta will risk the defense for free-flowing football like 22-23 season, but with better players. I'd like to see us more fluid, for sure. Let's see. We can't keep flogging Saliba, though. Needs more protection. CB is important if Saliba and White are injured. Well, I don't think Saliba will be injured when the season starts. White probably won't either. I think Timber will probably be the only player that's kind of returning when the season starts. But again, you're starting with White, Saliba, Gabriel, and Mauzu Skelly with Calafiori and Kivior on the bench. So, I don't want this overabundance of defender thing that we've had before, where we have all these players and we're like, yeah, we got this whole defense, and then like really we're not using anybody but the players that we keep talking about. Some players are going to have to play multiple positions, make it work. I don't know. Use Kivior, unless you're going to sell him for 40 million, make more than what you spend on him. There's no point in getting rid of him, is there? If we know that he can step in for Saliba at a decent level. You bought Calafiori for 40 something million. These players need to play. Like, constantly buying center backs just to sit on top of what we already have just feels like what are we doing here? 38 GA in his last 50 games for Arsenal is so underrated. I mean, is it underrated? I mean, I feel like we do this thing now, especially with attackers that don't score enough goals. We push it together with the assists, and then we're like, oh, the GA and all competitions and GA smash it all together. But with Kai, it's really not about how much he scores. It's when he scores. He's just not somebody that's going to come up with the big moments in the big games. When we're under pressure, when we need the opener, the equalizer, the winner in games that really matter, he doesn't come up with those. So he can do the 38 GA all he wants. But yeah, I'm a little bit like, whatever about that. We know what he is. I don't know what else needs to be like. I feel like people are wanting us to be Kai Havertz lovers, and I just feel like so many people are not going to get there because he's just not the guy. Like, I don't know. I feel like people are trying to force it. You don't have to put the GA together and do all comps, and then of course he's good. My eyes are telling me that he'd be a great squad player. That's what my eyes are telling me. I think with Zubi, maybe we will see more free-flowing football like we did in 22-23 and 23-24 second half. I mean, definitely, I think we'll see he has a great technical level, good tempo control, definitely somebody that can pick a pass. I think he's going to really help that. And then it'll give Odegaard the opportunity to play just more central and more free, because he won't have to come back and help, control tempo and build up play. So it's going to help us, Havertz is not a striker. They just don't admit it. I mean, he's not a striker, and that's fine. He's done a decent enough job at the striker position. I just stop trying to make Kai Havertz happen. It's not going to happen. You don't have to continuously write dissertations and storybooks about how people just don't understand football if they don't understand why he's so important to the team. Space invader, good movement. He's much better than what people give him credit for. He's a great tactical player, tactical weapon. I don't want to hear any of that. If I could go back and spend the 65 million on something different, I would. He just is not a player that I see as this game changer for us that people are trying to make him into. It just stop trying to make it happen. I heard something on Arsenal Vision where they said how a club run academy internationally create dribblers, hence Guehi, going to be the next new wave for low blocks, I think. There's a couple of different ways to break down deep blocks, not just spamming crosses, but dribblers and good passers that can pass in very small spaces are really useful, and we don't really have either one of those, so adding dribblers to the team will help that, and then adding somebody that can pick a pass through the lines, especially on that left-hand side, can help open up those blocks. Basically like Xhaka used to help us do. Xhaka used to do a lot of that. And essentially we would have Odegaard and Zinni and Xhaka passing really quickly because we passed a lot faster and finding those gaps in between the lines for our players, and we would win a lot more penalties. We would force the issue, and also Jesus did add that dribbling factor because he would break down blocks by helping with the dribbling. So adding those back in would definitely help us. Burmy says Kai should be there for squad depth only. He's done a job for the past season and a half, but we need so much more than he offers. I just think football is very simple sometimes, and you can have been better than what we maybe expected and done a good job, but ultimately you don't have to explain good players to people over and over. You don't need to write long tactical threads. You don't have to do any of those things. That's a new thing, but mostly your eye test tells you what players are good, and usually the data backs it up. And my eye tells me that he's okay and pretty good at some things, but he's just not. I don't need a dissertation. I really don't. Let's see. I don't know why Eddie Howe's team tries to create a rivalry with us. Even the Kai and the Chelsea CL deciding goal, dreadful finish. The goalkeeper actually never expected such a bad finish. That's why it worked. Such a lucky goal. Arsenal, unlike Chelsea, never has any luck. So, yeah, I don't really want to make the stream about him, but I just feel like he's the most underrated player in our team. He's so misunderstood. He's so much better than what people give him credit for. He's such an important part of the team. These things are just new I just don't know. I just don't really understand why we have to force it. We know who's good and who's not. We know who's important and who's not. It is what it is, But yeah, I am looking forward to seeing what we do from here. And what happens with Sesko in the next couple of days, because I do feel like we'll get an update on that soon. Not like a done deal, but like a moving closer, final steps, whatever. And yeah, I like the direction that we're moving in. Obviously, I know people want us to move faster, and that's fine. But I don't necessarily feel like we're moving too slow either, so yeah. But listen, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Unfortunately, I have to do other things today and can't just sit here and chit chat with you guys for hours, unfortunately. So let me go be an adult, go do other shit. But yeah, make sure you guys like and subscribe on the way out. If we get any breaking news, you guys know I'll come back. But like I said, I'm going out of town on Sunday, and I'll be out of town for about 10 days. So I'm trying to figure out what the schedule is going to be looking like, so I know whether or not I can go live daily while I'm out, which is just so like the worst timing ever, but it is work, so I need to go. But yeah, we'll figure it out. Even if I have to go live from my phone, we'll figure out something. I'll make sure that I show up in some capacity. But we'll make it work. Make sure you guys, like I said, like and subscribe. Enjoy the rest of your day. Be safe, and touch grass and go have some fun. It is the summertime. Bye.